Welcome to the Momentum webinar series, where we ask expert facilitators to weigh in on topics that help advance women in leadership.
A job, and we met soon after he landed. It's a very small island, and he came to one of my literary events, and we met there. And we spent around 8 years in Malta, and then we decided to give Birmingham a try.
Oh, now how long have y'all been here in Birmingham, Alabama?
We've been here for 14 months now.
Oh, wow. Okay, so you're just fresh. You're just brand new to Birmingham then.
I'm quite brand new, yes. Slowly getting accustomed. It was quite a culture shock.
Well, we are very honored to have you here, and everything that you have done as a poet, as you have been doing all your writings, all of the literary things that you have done, festivals and everything you've done medically, I would love for you to share with all of us how you even got started on creative writing from everything you're doing, and how you're using that to encourage women to understand their power of creativity, especially in a world where we're taught so much of, put your head down, get work done, stay focused, and the benefits of taking time to be creative and to just let your brain rest a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to be saying quite a lot about that, but in brief, my trajectory was, on one hand, slow. Some things started changing slowly, but on the other hand, I feel like I was creative since I was a child, and then at some point I decided to give it attention and energy and time. And I saw that it served me. And because of my circumstances and the way I wanted to change, sort of, I went through the pharmacy course, and I did enjoy pharmacy, but then something inside me wanted to write, right? Wanted to go down a completely different path. And so I had to be creative and resourceful to slowly change my trajectory to a different one. And I noticed that when I faced a problem, I had my family and friends telling me, oh, you're always coming up with some idea. You're always you're cornered, and you manage to create a window somewhere. And I listened. I thought, okay, this might be my strength, and this is something that once I've been given this kind of slant in my life, then I should nurture it and grow it and respect it in a way. We need to respect and recognize what we're good at, and sometimes it's not our first choice, but I think there's a lot to be said about working to our strengths.
Oh, absolutely. So we've had so many more come in. I want to thank you all for being here on Momentum Leaders webinar today with Miriam Calleja Shaw. She has been sharing with us a little bit of what brought her from Malta here to America was her husband. And so if you would please just, I do appreciate what you already have planned, but if you just take just a minute to share with people here what all you have been doing in the past and what's brought you into the creativity part.
What have I been doing? A lot.
Well, you've had so many accomplishments, and I guess that's it, because I don't want you, I do, brag on yourself. You've done some amazing things here, and I would love for you to share with everyone what you have been doing with all of your writings, not only your poems, but everything that you have been a part of with all the festivals and the awards that you have been given.
I think that I was writing poetry since I was a teenager, but I didn't share it for a long time. I thought it was, maybe it's not good enough. It's only written for me. And then, one day I showed it to one person and they liked it. And then I was in a situation where I could share my poetry with a bunch of strangers, a room full of strangers. And I did it. And so many people spoke to me afterwards and said, you've written what I wanted to write. I feel seen. I feel that I can connect with others because of what I heard from you. Just these phrases that really stuck with me and really made me feel like I can make emotions accessible. I can make people feel connected. I can make them see themselves as not an anomaly. You know, I can put things into words that others maybe struggle to do and struggle with kind of, should I write my emotions? Should I write about this topic? So there was that on the one side, so on the poetry side. I was lucky that, you know, I found a publisher who really loved my work and wanted to work with me again and again. And then it was a matter of really putting myself out there. So really showing my work to people, applying for grants and turning up at lots of, and it's what I did in Birmingham too. I turned up. It was difficult. It was, you know, overwhelming. It was a lot of new people, new faces, new accents that I didn't know. And it was just a matter of pushing myself just a little bit. I never regretted, you know, turning up to an event, especially literary events. And even when I was scared, I did it scared. So I think it's about saying yes and doing things even though you're scared, and just appreciating what you can give when you're creative, and how that affects others and how that helps others connect.
Thank you. And I thank you for doing that, because you are pouring into us, because you leaned into that and you were brave. I cannot even imagine. So just moving from one state to another is a lot, but changing cultures and language and everything. Thank you for doing the hard thing, Miriam, because we get to be the benefit of it now. Thank you so much.
Oh, and it's lovely to be here.
So take it away.
All right. So can you all see the screen?
Yes.
Great. Okay, so first of all, thank you so much, Darla, for welcoming me. And it's such an honor to be here and to have the opportunity to speak to female leaders, which is something that I love to do. I love working with women, because I feel that sometimes we don't put ourselves out there as much as we can. And I want to encourage, you know, just people to see themselves as they are. So as Darla said, I'm Miriam, and today I'm here to share my experience, and I think you can hear my enthusiasm already. So my enthusiasm on creativity, but specifically, it's placed in everyone's life, not just creatives. I believe that creativity can be harnessed to improve everyone's life, but it takes a little bit of work, right? So what it takes, I think, is one, intentionality. You recognize your creative powers or your creative slump, some areas where perhaps your strengths are shining more than in other areas in your life. And another thing is persistence. So as I said in response to Darla's question, fear is a part of my life, to be honest. I'm not very naturally outgoing. I spend a lot of time by myself, which I love doing, but I persist because I know not only is it good for me to get out there, in terms of networking, because everybody knows that, but also it helps me to grow my creative muscle, right? I meet new people. Everybody has something interesting to say. Everybody has something interesting going on in their life. You just have to ask, and you just have to be there, right? If you're not there, if you stay at home, there's no way to know. So today I'll be tackling a few aspects of creativity, and I hope to convince you of this, right? My job here is to kind of start a little revolution. That's why I'm in Birmingham, to start this revolution of creativity. And so I'm hoping that at least, you know, one or two of you leave the room here preaching my message, just going to your family and to your friends and saying, oh, you know what, I heard about creativity today, and that will be my job done. So we called this the power of creativity. I also used here creativity for life, because I want to instill the message that creativity is not for only work, only art, only hobbies, only something. Once you are creative everywhere. So this is what I've been reading lately. Insight, creativity, and humor are so elusive because the mind is so efficient. The mind functions to create patterns out of its surroundings. Once the patterns are formed, it becomes possible to recognize them, to react to them, to use them. Incidentally, let's see, I cannot see many of you right now, but has anyone heard of Edward de Bono before?
I haven't.
Sorry, I switched slides by mistake. So Edward de Bono, and you see he is writing in British English, not American English, is the godfather of lateral thinking. And incidentally, he is from the same island I'm from. He's Maltese. He was, sorry, because he passed not too long ago. He was a great internationally known philosopher. I think he reached the peak of his fame when he came up with this term, lateral thinking. Lateral thinking is creative, while vertical thinking is the thinking we all do. This is not to say that you should choose lateral thinking over vertical thinking. They are, you know, they go together. Vertical thinking is thinking step by step, whereas creative thinking is thinking of solutions that are perhaps different, outrageous, not expected, right? And he called it at the time lateral thinking. This was in the 70s. And so you'll notice the U in humor, which is not a typo. And let's see what else. The S in recognize, because this is written in British English. I'm curious to hear your initial thoughts as regards this quotation.
So I want to ask you something. I want to make sure I understand. So he is saying that the lateral thinking is what our mind actually just goes to be efficient, correct?
Vertical thinking is what our mind goes to be efficient.
Okay.
And lateral thinking is what he termed as our creative side.
Okay.
Which is in the step-by-step kind of thing.
That's interesting, because we are talking about the vertical thinking at work, how we are, you get into those patterns and your brain gets into those. And I don't want to say rut, but it is like a path that your brain automatically goes to. So you are not having to think of every tiny thing that you do through the day. It's just sort of like it groups it together. And how hard it is. And you have to be so intentional to create a new pattern. As you're talking about, the lateral is just, it's a lot of work, and you have to be very intentional about it. So yes, that is hard to do. You have to recognize it and be very intentional with it.
Yes, and we do this, and I'm going to say how, but we create a habit of using lateral thinking. And now, if we were to use lateral thinking for everything all the time, it would be way too much, right? So that is why both vertical thinking and lateral thinking are important. You don't want to be thinking laterally while you're driving, for example, right? You want to do the step by step. And you don't want to be thinking so much about everything. Otherwise, there is no time for the rest of your life, right? So both of them are important, and Edward de Bono encourages the use of sort of the practice, the building by habits, which I'm going to talk about, of lateral thinking to go hand in hand with your vertical thinking. And I also chose this other quotation by Edward de Bono. There is about creativity a mystique of talent and intangibles. This may be justified in the art world, where creativity involves aesthetic sensibility, emotional resonance, and a gift for expression. But it is not justified outside that world. More and more, creativity is coming to be valued as the essential ingredient in change and in progress. It is coming to be valued above knowledge and above technique, since both these are becoming so accessible. I'm curious, how many of you think of creativity as something mysterious?
I do. I don't, like when you say lateral thinking, I don't know how to do that. Does that make sense? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I want to know the steps to do lateral thinking. So
yeah. Yes. And I don't blame you. I think this is completely normal that some of you will be thinking, oh, I don't have creativity, and also maybe thinking I don't need creativity. But I'm hoping that since you're here, you're curious and willing to.
I'm very curious on how we can, because I know we've been training on this and learning this, how the creativity and as the lateral thinking that is being talked about here is essential to being a better leader and being more productive in your work. It kind of sounds like that is not cohesive, but yet it is. And we are learning that as your brain, as you spend more, as you make time to have the creativity, it really does give your brain an opportunity to solve problems better and to be better at your at the vertical thinking stage.
That's right. That's right. I think they keep each other healthy. So these are some other kind of assumptions that are often made about creativity. So assuming that everyone already thinks creatively, and when we assume something like that, we think other people are as creative as I am. Assuming that it is a special subject, not of use or relevance to everyone. Assuming that creativity or intelligence are randomly assigned at birth. I get this a lot. Oh, because you were creative, you know, you were given this talent, and everyone, like other people weren't given this talent. I think that some people are, so some people are better at music, at dancing, at writing, but that doesn't mean they're going to do it successfully, right? They need to give it some attention. Or assuming that creativity is fully developed by the time we reach adulthood. Another thing, you know, because creativity is often associated with play, with finding yourself and growing. Obviously, I believe that all of these are myths, if I haven't made it obvious already. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here. And I do believe that everyone can develop better creativity skills. And obviously, I'm telling you why I'm letting you wait, but you see why I'm letting you wait.
Miriam, I want to ask you, did you ever assume any of this before you got into more of the creative writing? Did you ever assume any of these?
I often fall into the trap of assuming that everyone is already creative because we tend to think that everybody else is like us. So when I meet people who tell me, oh, I don't enjoy reading, I never read, I never notice certain things, and it shocks me, and I should know better. But yes, I do, and I also, I think, went through some time of assuming it is a special subject that is not really useful everywhere else. That, okay, I have this, you know, big imagination as a child, but is it going to be useful, you know, in the adult world? Is it going to be useful in work? And I'm sure I switched, I said, yes, useful, no, not useful, a few times before I firmly planted myself in yes, it is useful and very relevant.
I would be interested in anyone, if you want to put anything in the chat from everyone. Have you ever assumed anything about the creative side of yourself or of other people? We would love to see that. If you have anything that you would like to add to our conversation on being creative, and like you just said, how do you even start those processes? And I think you just hit on the first thing is be aware of what you're already assuming and let go of that.
Yeah. And it's it's a lifelong journey in a way. So, but becoming aware of, okay, just taking a minute to think, how do I view this? How have I tackled my assumptions before? So I will have a message. I tend to think of children as creative, not less mature, exactly, but more free. Yes. Mm-hmm. Definitely. Definitely. I mean, creativity, it's funny because I'm going to say something that I'm going to later, later I'm going to say the opposite. Creativity is seen as, if a story is linear, creativity is like a firework, right? So it's messy. It feels like something that maybe is not well understood, but I'm here to kind of bust those myths. So if I haven't convinced you already, I'm going to tell you something. Your brain doesn't distinguish between situations. So I'm making it clear here that the brain and the mind are very different, right? So the brain is an organ, like the kidneys, like your liver. The brain's functions, when it's working properly, is to protect us. So it will often tell us things that aren't quite true, but it's doing it with the best intentions. So, in a risky or fearful situation, let me use myself, for example, preparing for this talk, a part of me, the little critic sitting on my shoulder, is saying, oh, nobody's going to be interested in this. That's my brain. My brain is protecting me. It's releasing fear. It's literally releasing fear as a hormone. And it's telling me, oh, no, you're not going to do well. My mind knows that I've talked about this extensively. I have X number of years of experience, and it's telling me instead, no, you'll be fine. You know a lot. You need to do this. You need to share your experience with people. You've done this for years. There are conflicting things. The brain cannot help it. The brain is doing its best to protect the body, right? So it doesn't want the body to be in dangerous situations. So since the brain doesn't distinguish between situations, it means that your skills in one area are going to be also transposed to other areas. And so improving your creativity at work will make you more creative. And think of it here, not just as a problem-solving skill, right? But also a problem-solving skill. But it will make you more creative at home, in your relationships, in your relationship with yourself, in your studies, your hobbies, your environment. So think of it not as something, selfish. You're dedicating time to your own creativity. In fact, what I want to say mostly is, by becoming more creative, you're doing yourself, your family, your friends, your colleagues, your superiors a favor, right? And they should all encourage you, because it will help you be more motivated, more energetic, more enthusiastic, all of these great things, right? And when there are difficulties, it will help you problem solve and pivot if need in these situations. And also it will help you believe in your own thinking skills, right? Because when you train your creative muscle, okay, there might be moments where you're like stumped, you don't know what to do with this problem. But then there is also the voice that says, okay, you've done this before. Let's think of a creative way out. Right. So next I'm going to do a little bit of an experiment. This is the first time I'm doing this exercise, but I really believe in it. So, I think most of you have your camera switched off, but if any of you are in a position to switch your camera on, I would really appreciate it in the next few minutes.
Okay.
Let me explain what I'm going to do. So you can stay muted, but I am going to, actually, I encourage you to stay muted, otherwise it will be a really big mess for us. And thank you for switching your camera on. I really, really appreciate it. So I'm going to be asking you some questions. And again, if you are in a position to do so, I want you to answer those questions aloud. I cannot lip read. I don't know if anyone else can, but I'm hoping everyone will be preoccupied answering the question. And I'm going to ask you a series of questions. And every time I'm going to give you just a few seconds to either say your question aloud. If there are people and you don't want to say your answer aloud, just mouth the words, okay? But it's important that rather than just thinking, that you can hear your own answer. I'm sorry if you feel silly, but I think it will it will help. Let's see if there's anything else I need to tell you. So I'm really hoping today that as you answer my questions, one of you or more than one of you will have an epiphany. That's my wish, okay? It might not happen right now during the call, but it might happen later. And I'm really hoping you'll tell me if it does. So, everyone ready? I'm going to start. What is the problem? I want to see your lips moving. Think of a problem. What is one possible solution? What is a more outrageous solution? What is stopping you? Is that really true? What if you had an extra hour of time or energy a week? A day? What one thing, however small, could you do this week to make your life easier in terms of this problem? What's stopping you? Is that true? Those are my questions. Now I'm going to give you a few minutes just in case you want to take notes. You said something that you never thought of before, or hopefully you had an epiphany. I'm going to give you a minute or two to do that. And please use the chat to leave any comments. Did this work for you? Did this absolutely not work for you? Remember, it was an experiment and I took a risk. So I'd love to hear your comments. It's interesting when we are afraid of the outcome that sometimes we are afraid of failing, but sometimes we are afraid of succeeding, right? And we are afraid of succeeding because success means more work. And it might already be a lot and too much work, right? And I find it funny how I think when I was younger, I felt that, you know, when I succeed, I will take it easy. When I do better, I can be more relaxed. And it's not like that. You do more, you have more responsibility, you have more work. It's great, but also, are you ready? Are you ready for it? Yes, and yes, our environment forces us to avoid our environment, especially I find here in the US, that everything is made easier, more convenient, more packaged, more, you know, things are created so that flow happens, but not flow in the creative sense, so that you can go from one thing to the next without thinking too much, as though thinking should be banned, right? And when we are at work, so any job we do, there's some box ticking, right? So even creative jobs, there is tedious work. There are moments where you're bored out of your brains, but you still have to do it, right? And the more we box things up, yes, it is safe. Yes, it is, you know, we don't forget the steps and it is convenient in a way, but is it forcing us to think in just the same way every single day? Is it like killing a part of us that should be alive and should be, you know, in sync with nature, should be kind of looking for more possibilities? So that's why I wonder. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah, allowing others. Yeah. That's good. That's just it. Sometimes we need to also allow the world and allow others to show us something, you know. It might not be the exact solution, but it's a step. Yay, we have an epiphany. I'm so happy. I often lie to myself as well. You know, I say I don't have time for this. I often have to do time audits on myself. I'm self-employed, so no one is like really controlling me in any way. And so, you know, obviously I have deadlines for my clients, but if I'm mean to myself because I don't manage my time well, I'm the one to suffer, right? So getting out of our own way and that question, is it true? I know it hurts. I, you know, the few of you I can see on camera, I know there was a knitting of the brow when I said, is it true? Because it's an effective but very revealing question. I love this. I love this dialogue. So the reason, okay, Alison posted this again because she had just sent it to me. Yes, this is interesting, Alison, because I find that sometimes, and I'm going to mention this as well. Actually, let me mention it when I get to that slide. This thing about bullet points. Let me mention it very soon. Okay, so you know, as we mentioned before, my world is poetry. So often, and I see creativity in poetry because it's nature, and what it does is it brings a really effective means of putting words in such a way that they will make you think of something new. And sometimes you think there's nothing new in the world, right? And you read a poem and you're like, oh my goodness, there is something new in the world, and someone said it. So a really effective and powerful poem, what does it do? Like I said in my slide, it identifies a problem. Now, when I say problem, it can be, you know, it identifies an observation. It identifies something that is happening in the world. And it combines unlikely duos. So one exercise that I like to give my creative writers, this is an ongoing thing, right? Not just something you do on one session, is to make lists. I encourage them to keep a notebook where they make all sorts of different lists, from things I'd like to do, places I'd like to visit, places I've been kissed, objects that are white in my house, whatever, okay? So lists of whatever. And as you make these lists, maybe you make one a week, one a month, whatever schedule you're on. When time passes and you go back to them, you get one thing from one list and one thing from another list. What do they have in common? How can they go together? This is a good exercise to start building that creativity muscle, right? You put things together that aren't generally put together. So, and this is how metaphor works, right? This is what a metaphor is. So unlike vertical thinking, which follows the sequential, the logical path, this kind of thinking encourages exploration, right? So there are so many possibilities, and sometimes they seem unrelated, but when you open your mind to them, when you open your eyes to them, something less obvious comes out. But it requires this open mind. This requires this willingness to question assumptions and the ability to see beyond what is immediately obvious. So I found this poem to show you. Which is a poem by Ada Limon. I'm sure some of you have heard of her. Anticipation. Before I dug the plot in our yard, before we had a yard, when grass only grew between stop signs and garbage cans, when I had one pot for a pepper and one pot for aroma on the fire escape, I was planting my secret seeds inside you, the crimson linen curtains billowing in liquid spring wind, the future deepening in the heat. And what this poem does is it places us in a concrete place, right? It places us in this yard, in this place she used to live before, where she maybe didn't have enough space, didn't have enough things. And then there is a turn in the poem. I was planting my secret seeds inside you. How simple and how profound. And this is how metaphor works, right? You are taken down a path and then it changes trajectory. So that's how creativity is used in poetry as well. I showed you one of the greats, but other people do it too. Right, so we're gonna get to the juicy part. So I've mentioned, things take time. If I decided to run a marathon tomorrow and I don't have any training, I will probably not make it. I might injure myself, or I might give up, right? So I don't expect anyone to develop the muscle right now, but think of it as increasing your stamina. So training regularly to increase your stamina until it becomes a habit. And then there's the question of intuition. How is intuition related to creativity? And this is another thing with a lot of myths surrounding it, intuition. We say that someone is very intuitive, they have gut feelings, and that these feelings that they experience are often right. But in intuition, like in creativity, there's a lot we pick up without knowing. And rather than the firework that I described before, right? So linear versus firework. Creativity actually works on patterns too. So it learns a pattern making system. And intuition is similar to that. So intuition can be seen as the mind and body agreeing, right? And there's so much we pick up without knowing. So what we call red flags, right? We meet someone and we think, oh, I don't quite like that person so much. I'm not sure why. But there's probably something that you're seeing that through experience you learned to pick up. But another important thing when it comes to creativity and intuition is knowing what to pick up, right? So that is something to planting a seed, intuition and creativity. Okay, I already said this. So the mind is a pattern-making system, right? Notice how I say the mind and not the brain. The brain is wired to protect us. The mind can develop new pathways. That's why creativity needs time, right? Because it's like learning. The mind isn't just a static thing, it changes. So if you had a bad habit and you decided today to start changing that, if you said, okay, instead of scrolling through Facebook until I've seen everything twice and it makes me sad, I'm not putting Facebook down, but sometimes we waste time. We're not there. We're not taking something good from it. I am going to read a poem. And I force myself to do that because what I really feel like doing is just scrolling. So I force myself to do that day after day. And then what happens? Automatically, my brain is placing, instead of placing pleasure in like the waste of time, it starts placing the feeling of discovery and the feeling of learning new words, learning new turn of phrase, feeling seen with pleasure, right? So we replace, and often when we say, well, I don't have time, if you do a time audit, you realize, can I clip on a creative thing onto something that perhaps I have to do or I don't need to do? So how can I do it? So these are some things you can do. And these are, like I said, these are small choices, right? It doesn't have to be, I'm going to dedicate one whole day to creativity a week. I don't, if you can do that, it's great, but probably you cannot do that. And I wouldn't suggest going big from the beginning. I would suggest just small tweaks every day that can control what you're consuming. So for example, you know that while you're cooking, let's say, you would enjoy listening to something, why not listen to something that introduces you to a new topic? This is also creativity, learning, right? Get into the habit of learning. Even if it's just a 20-minute podcast, you know, sometimes the news makes us more sad than happy, even though we want to know what's happening. How about learning something instead? So widen your scope. What I mean by widen your scope is listen or do things that aren't 100% your area, aren't comfortable. Yes, reading fiction. Yes, consuming fiction. I mean, you know, most books are great. Yes, I would say yes. Just reading in general exercises your imagination, right? Rather than something being given to you. I also think watching a series on TV can be really creative because you notice patterns, you notice story, right? You learn how other people live, perhaps, but broaden your scope. So if you usually read crime novels, read something different, read an autobiography, listen to a book while you're walking, attach things together, right? So I'm saying attach things together because it's an easier way to start consuming things that you don't normally consume. You know, yes, games totally keep the brain sharp. Games with other people, 2 in 1, socializing, getting to know your friends in a different way. Play. I encourage play all the time, you know. Even sometimes I'm in a workshops and people get really serious and really kind of, they're competing with themselves. How well can I write this first draft? Play, have fun. When you're playing, that voice which is always telling you you can't do this is a little quieter, you know. So you end up doing things that are out of the norm. Create moments of interest. So what makes a poet different to other people, in my opinion, or a writer different to other people, is the way that they focus and they give attention to what is happening. So giving attention to something small, looking out the window for a minute. You know, you're working on your computer every 25 minutes, make it a habit of taking a few minutes just to look outside. One, you're resting your eyes, notice things, you know, notice. It's funny because I moved here and I'm like, oh, you know, I'm overwhelmed by how many new things there are. So I'm like, oh, this flower, this bird, this sound, everything is so new. But this is what I practice, right? I notice. I could have come here and notice 10% of the things I notice, but I go for a walk and I take photographs of flowers, right? That is also creative. Just taking time to kind of meditate on what you're seeing. Build a treasure of material to draw from. So again, you know, read a book review of a book you like. See what other people notice. Save it. Save it for a time when you have time to look at it properly. And consume mindfully. That's why I said yes, fiction, yes. Consume things that will make you think. So I'm not saying never read the so-called beach reads. Yes, read, have fun, watch, you know, trashy TV if that helps you relax. Yes, do all of these things, but also consume and allow into your mind things that will make you grow. And sometimes these things aren't very interesting at first, but then you get into them more. Practice pausing. I already said this, but I'll repeat it. You will be much better at your work if you give yourself a few minutes to go into your brain. So take your mind into your brain and just breathing, just taking 2 minutes sometimes can make all the difference. Clear, right? Clear up, continue. It will help your focus. Connect to the earth and its seasons. What I mean by this is there are seasons where you feel it's hot, you're a little slowed down. Respect that, right? Respect that your body is feeling different because it's a different time of the year. When you make, when you make plans, and let's say, I don't know, for example, I've started the year and I thought, this is what I want to write in this quarter. And then something happened and it made me want to do something different, right? So I respected the fact that my priorities and my goals can change. And I didn't berate myself. I wasn't like, oh, didn't you say that you wanted to do that thing? But I sat down, I made a list, and I said, okay, it's okay. We're allowed to change our mind. And, we do change our mind. What are the consequences? Probably none. So let's go ahead and do this different thing. And like I said, tie things together. So set up these very, very small rituals. Put your thoughts down first thing in the morning, right? So just journal 3 lines every day. Force yourself every day to just journal 3 lines, first thing in the morning, last thing at night. What will happen? Things will start coming out, right? Especially first thing in the morning before you've rushed. So if you can afford to kind of wake up a little earlier before you're rushing, set up these small things that with time grow your creativity. Ask yourself the same questions I asked you earlier. What is the problem? What can I do? What can I do better? Is it true? What's stopping me? What's stopping me? Is it true? So I'm mindful of the time, and I want to make sure there's enough time for questions. But these are the possible side effects and probably why you're here today. I was once there in a job I didn't like. I suffered for some time, and then I decided I'm going to do this job really well until I can move on, right? And sometimes you'll be in these positions that you cannot leave yet. So when you are creative, you renew your enthusiasm. You renew the sense of play even during work. You reignite your purpose. And when you reignite your purpose, even if something is a little boring and tedious sometimes, you remember who you are serving, right? When I get bored and I get scared and I remember who I'm serving. I'm serving, in this case, a room full of female leaders who are strong and who want to bring everything they can to the table. And so I hope to bring this improved awareness of your own power and that you are ready to receive. So I'm happy to take some questions.
I wanted to let everyone know, while you're thinking about any questions, I have posted Miriam's website, the link to her website right here on our chat so that you can reach out to her. And she has also put on here how to reach out to her on Gmail. We would love to hear some more from you. I'm so grateful that you're here in Birmingham, and look forward to so many more opportunities to come in contact with you.
Me too. Me too. I'm excited, and I hope I have the opportunity to bump into some of these lovely people who have been listening to me patiently. I hope I've given you practical points, because it's easy to get lost talking about creativity and for it to remain abstract. But what I wanted to say, there are practical ways. There are ways to start, and then things will come to you. You will attract the creative opportunities. Yes, thank you. That's what I was hoping, that it would be practical and usable. That's lovely to hear.
Thank you so much. To see where you came from, working from medical writings to going into poetry, what a flip, and how you've taken that to be more creative in your writing and to sustain us. and to give us encouragement and how to combine what we've been doing just to make sure we get our work done, and to breathe a little bit and to get our brains thinking outside of its box so that we can be better and more creative, and to enjoy more of what we do. I love what you said, that even when it is like even if it's some of the tasks or the projects within the things that we love doing can get mundane or just get like, oh, seriously, again. And I want to encourage everyone here who is a mom and trying to get all the laundry done, the food, the lunches packed, the clothes laid out, and then head off to work and do things too, of how having a moment to be creative with your children and teach them to hold on to that creativity and carry that on into your work really helps you and your whole team be more productive. Miriam, thank you for sharing everything today. And just real quick, before we go, I do want to remind everyone that we are having our upward applications for the next cohort that'll be coming in next year. That will be opening up very soon. So watch for that on our site. I'm sorry, I'm sitting here looking at all the notes, and I appreciate everything you've shared today, Miriam. This is so fun. I love stuff like this. So this has been encouraging for me today. And I just want to thank you all for being here today with Momentum Leaders. Miriam, thank you. I would love to have you back again and do some dig a little bit more in all of this. And hopefully you'll have an opportunity to maybe set up a workshop here in Birmingham to do some more things. That would be amazing too. Thank you all for, thank you. Do you have any questions for us, Miriam? Any homework?
Just what I would like to say is, because you mentioned I flipped from medical to, I'm still a medical writer, but this is how I introduce creativity. So I have studied the structure of story, right? That is what I do with my writing, with my workshops and so on. And so knowing certain things about how stories work, and this is true simply reading, watching TV, obviously giving my workshops, but it's a lot of the things I put into my brain. I think it helps me create a narrative where we can connect to more people. So even in medical writing, that seems like the opposite thing of creativity, right? So I encourage you, take storytelling, take narrative and put it into your job. How can you put it into your job? Ask yourself that. And if you just take that one message, I'm really, really happy. Thanks once again for having me.
Absolutely.
I would love to be back and have a great week.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for being on here today, and we'll look forward to seeing you again. I have one more. I just want to make sure. Thank you all for being here, and look forward to seeing y'all again on our next webinar. And Miriam, look forward to meeting you in person. We'll have to set that up for sure. Okay.
We will.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for taking the time to invest in yourself by watching our webinar. This series is produced in partnership with Social U. Many thanks to our sponsor companies, including America's Thrift Stores, Blue Cross Blue Shield of Alabama, Protective Life, and Regions Bank. A full list of Momentum sponsors is online at momentumleaders.org/sponsors. Beyond this webinar, we have a lot of ways for you to get more momentum in your life. Check out the show notes for additional links and resources.